Hi, I'm Andrea and welcome to Productive C#. In this video, I'm going to talk about how you can create a client-side Blazor web application. Blazor is a technology that allows you to create a front-end web application using C# instead of using JavaScript, and it is part of ASP.NET Core. In order to work with Blazor, you need to install Visual Studio 2019 and .NET Core 3. At the time of this recording, you need to install the preview version of these tools. In addition to that, you want to go to the Visual Studio extensions and install the Blazor Visual Studio extension. This extension provides you with the templates required in order to be able to create the project. Then you do File, New Project. You select ASP.NET Core Web Application. Click Next. Then you select the project name and Create. And then you will be able to find the Blazor client-side template that you can use in order to be able to create a Blazor application. There's another hosting mode that is called Blazor server side, but I'm going to talk about that in a separate video. So let's pick client side and click Create. So I already done that for you, and this is basically what the project that Microsoft create. I'm not going to look at the project specifically in this video, but let's try to run it and see how the project looks like. So when I run this application, as you can see, it takes a bit of time to load because it's effectively loading a full implementation of the kind of a .NET implementation, a mono implementation in the browser, and then running the application. We're gonna get into the details in a second. This app is basically very standard with like an application, a button that increments a counter, and then a page that fetches some data from the server. This application is running completely client-side, and is written in C#. So let's have a look at what's the architecture of the system is. This is very important to understand. So Blazor is a technology that does not require anything to be installed in the client machine. It's not like Silverlight that requires to install a browser plugin. It's relying on a web standard that is called WebAssembly. So WebAssembly is effectively a low-level assembly language that has been defined and is a web standard and allows you to run kind of code almost at native speed inside the browser, and it is supported by pretty much all of the browsers around, and it effectively provides a compilation target for any high-level languages. So what Microsoft did, Microsoft created a mono runtime and written completely in WebAssembly. It compiled effectively mono into WebAssembly, and then this means that effectively you can run your C# code and any kind of framework libraries directly on top of this mono runtime, running inside the WebAssembly virtual machine, inside the browser sandbox. The code that you're running effectively is isolated inside the browser sandbox, so you are not allowed to do like any accessing the file system or anything like that requires privileges or stuff like that. So it's effectively as secure as JavaScript. Then what Blazor does is it's building a shadow DOM that is keeping in sync with the real DOM, similar to other technologies like JavaScript front-end frameworks, and it's doing that with the Blazor.js file and mono.js. So this is a bit of JavaScript that helps to keep the two DOM in sync. You don't need to worry about that. This is completely done for you transparently by the framework. And obviously you can also use some JavaScript as well if you want to manipulate the DOM directly using some interrupt. We're gonna see more about this in other videos. So what you need to understand is effectively that you build your application, you compile that into a DLL, and this DLL is downloaded on the client in the client browser and run on top of a mono runtime written in WebAssembly. Okay, and all of these run inside the UI thread in the browser in the same process. Everything runs client-side. There's no need to have any kind of server-side technology in order to be able to host a Blazor application. Okay, so let's switch back to the application and have a look a bit more in details what actually happens when you open a website written in Blazor client-side. So let's go back to Home and have a look at the Network tab in the Chrome Developer Tools. Okay, I'm refreshing. And let's have a look what we get here. So if I order what is downloaded by size, let's wait until it's fully loaded. There we go. I switch back and order by size. You can see that mono.wasm is the biggest file, is about a megabyte, okay? And that is the file that contains the entire mono runtime compiled into WebAssembly. Okay. Then you can see also some other framework libraries we are all familiar with, MS-corelib, DLL, for example, and stuff like that. And then you also have mono.js, that is the JavaScript file responsible for synchronizing the DOMs. And there is also the Blazor.webassembly.js that is responsible for like bootstrapping the downloading the runtime and bootstrapping the application and stuff like that. So in total, it's about 5 megabytes of stuff is being downloaded. So as you can see, this is one of the downside of running client-side Blazor, is because there is a lot of runtime and framework DLLs need to be downloaded on the client before to be able to open the application. And Microsoft is working heavily to try to reduce this as much as possible. Okay. So what are the advantages of using this approach? So this application is being completely written in C#, and all of the difficult part of updating the DOM is done for you by Blazor. The advantage is that you can effectively use C# to write client-side web application. No longer, you don't need to use JavaScript now, all the time. This technology does not require any browser plugin, so it's not Silverlight. Is effectively a standard, using standard technologies. It's available in any browsers. Okay, the advantage is that you don't need to have any server-side technology. You don't need to have ASP.NET Core on the server side to be able to host Blazor application. You can just simply copy the DLLs, put them into a server that's just as a static application, or even like an Azure Blob Storage, and just put it there, and you will be able to actually consume the application directly on the client. So the fact that all the work is done on the client also means that there's a lot of scalability as well that you can get, and that's very encouraging. The downsides, as I said, is that obviously the code is running inside the browser, so you need to consider about the limitation that the browsers have. The WebAssembly support, of course, is required, so all the browsers are not supported. Like, for example, Internet Explorer is never going to support WebAssembly, so if you want to run there, you need to consider server-side Blazor. And as I mentioned, the size of the runtime, makes the initial request to the application slower, so it's definitely a cons, but Microsoft is working hard to reduce that as much as possible. Finally, the other downside is that obviously you don't have as mature tooling as you have for the server side in order to be able to debug your code, and also you're running on a less mature runtime, so you're running on this mono runtime compiled to WebAssembly. While if you use a Blazor server side, you run your application directly on .NET Core. That is a lot more mature framework. So these are kind of the pro and cons of this approach. But the client-side approach is effectively is very promising, because basically allows you to write complete front-end web application directly in C#. Of course, nothing stopping you to combine the two things. You can have a client-side Blazor application that's obviously talk to an API, and that you can host that API on an ASP.NET Core web application. In this case, when you do fetch data, you simply fetch the data from a static JSON file at the moment. But you get the idea. So you can definitely use this technology as one new addition to the web kind of platform, as a way to create front-end applications. You don't need to choose Angular, React, or any other technologies anymore. You can just pick Blazor and use Blazor to build your front-end applications. And this is it for this video. Thank you very much for watching.